Chapter 336, Good and Evil. Be benevolent to others? And be evil to others? This concept was crystal clear to Chi-Nan, yet she didn't care about it whatsoever. In her world, every threat to the everlasting feast hall and to herself were nothing but enemies. Hence, she would never be faint-hearted and hesitant against any enemies. For those who were neither enemies nor her own people, their life and death had nothing to do with her. She also learned some things about Tang Xiu. She felt that Tang Xiu spoke somewhat insincerely and didn't match his own working style. "Can I ask you a question, boss?" After hesitating for a moment, Chi-Nan couldn't bear asking. "Ask." "Boss, you also know that good and evil have never coexisted since time immemorial. Can you tell me what is good and what is evil exactly?" The subtle distinction between good and evil is what's inside one's heart. When one's heart is filled with benevolence and goodness, one would do good deeds. When one's heart is filled with maleficence and wicked thoughts, one would do evil deeds. Humans as individuals are always contradictory living beings, for they have both good and evil inside them. But hearts, in particular, are always the source of one's conduct and deeds, for which is the essence to distinguish between good and evil, said Tang Xiu faintly. "But I want to know something. Are you good or evil, boss?" asked Chi-Nan once again. Tang Xiu glanced at her and calmly said, "I'm an evil one when dealing with my enemies, and I'm a good one when treating my own people. Let me give you an analogy. I had killed a lot of people when I was in Hong Kong, but those people were not the good kind. I wouldn't have bothered about them were it not for their provocations. But they did provoke me, wanting put me down. Naturally, I had to fight back and even kill them. But to those ordinary people who treat me without evil intention and don't harm me, I'll always be benevolent to them. I will help those who are good within my power. For instance, my other identity as a doctor in Shuangqing Province's Star City Chinese Medical Hospital." Looking at Tang Xiu in a daze, Chi-Nan had never imagined that Tang Xiu, who was just admitted to university, turned out to be a Chinese medical hospital's doctor. "I got it, boss." Having deeply analyzing Tang Xiu's disposition, Chi-Nan finally concluded that her boss was a good man. "It's good that you understand," Tang Xiu nodded and said, "we will be very powerful in the future, it's inevitable. But even so, we must never regard ordinary people as ants. In actuality, even in the martial arts realm, the highly respected and noble figures of true martial arts experts do not only cultivate their martial skills, but also temper their self-conscience. There's a good saying to express this, that is, martial virtue, wu de. If you ask what martial virtue is, wu as in martial is the boldness and strength to ward off the fight, to stop any hostilities and wars, and also the underlying idea to strengthen one's body. While de as in virtue, is by means of benevolence, which is the core concept of righteousness. Taken together with the word to stop mentioned before, one had to have a set of upright code of conduct and personal integrity for each word, action, and mean. To sum it up, martial virtue is the code of conduct for people who practice martial arts with the principle of benevolence and righteousness. The Chinese civilization has 5,000 years of history as well as a long history of martial arts heritage. Martial artists must temper their temperament to have a stable mind. Only then will they have the confidence to attain a higher level, even attaining a guru level. They can even make steady and continuous progress to break through the limitation of ordinary people's boundary. As Tang Xiu explained it, he turned his head to look through the car's window and lamented, "Every living being is not equal, for they have different strengths and weaknesses. Using strength to overlook the weak will only bring about trouble for ourselves. Only by showing benevolence will one be able to maintain their conscience as well as will able to go further in their road. With this, it will reduce the troubles in one's cultivation path." Chi-Nan said approvingly, "What you said is very reasonable, boss. In a word that's easier to understand, having many friends is better than having a lot of enemies. I'll firmly bear these words in mind." I won't kill anyone as long as they don't harm our everlasting feast hall and the people I care about. It's good that you can understand it. Tang Xiu nodded. With a trace of a smile on her face, Qinan asked, anyway, boss, you really don't want tonight's gambling stake money? It's your win, not mine, Tang Xiu laughed and said, if you have to give it to me, then I'll give it back to you. Consider it as a welfare gift for an outstanding subordinate. You're generous, boss. Working for you is really my luck, said Qinan as she smiled tenderly. No bootlicking. Just focus on driving. Tang Xiu couldn't help laughing and said, also, contact Tianli after you get back. If she has left Jingmen Island, tell her to come to Shanghai. I'll contact her later. Blue Star Villa Complex. The security guards stood guard seriously at the entrance sentry post. Every vehicle that went out and came in must swipe their access card. For those without access cards, they must first register themselves. Screech. A black Lamborghini stopped at main entrance post. Hello, if you do not have an access card, you need to register to enter. One of the security guards saluted and said respectfully. Anyone who became a security guard in this upscale villa complex naturally knew that only the filthy rich could live in this luxurious villa complex. Some of them often came in and out with multi-million sports cars. Give me an access card, said Tang Xiu after he opened the door and got off. The security guard stared blankly for a moment. He had seen Tang Xiu yesterday and he knew Tang Xiu was the owner of number 9 villa. But he didn't expect that Tang Xiu, who left by cab this morning, would come back in the evening with a strikingly beautiful woman who drove him back in a Lamborghini. Hello, Mr. Tang. Would you like to register this car's license plate for your access card? Tang Xiu was surprised for a moment. He shook his head and said, this is my friend's car. Mine are inside the villa, but I didn't pay attention to their license plates, though. The strange look on the security guard's face got weirder as he said, Mr. Tang, we need to register the car's license plate to give the access card. Oh, it's like that. Tang Xiu forced a smile and said, can you go with me? There are a few cars in my garage. You help me handle more cards for them. This, all right. The security guard complied. After speaking with the other security guards behind him, he then turned back to Tang Xiu and said, Mr. Tang, please ask the young lady to register first so you can go ahead. I'll be catching up with you on the patrol car later. Tang Xiu hesitated. He then turned his head to Qinan and said, you can go back now. I'll go directly on the patrol car. All right. Qinan replied as she turned the car over under Tang Xiu's watch. After taking a U-turn, she then drove into the road nearby. Well, I have to trouble you then, laughed Tang Xiu and said, I'll cooperate for any kind of information you need. Okay. The security guard didn't imagine that Tang Xiu would be so easygoing, the smile on his face getting brighter. Upon their arrival at number 9 villa, Tang Xiu then opened the door with his door card and brought the security guard to the garage. As the electric door slowly opened and the lights were brightly lit, 4 cars appeared in front of the security guard. Hiss. The security guard was a well-informed person. He often saw luxurious cars coming in and out of the villa complex. But despite that, he couldn't help but breathe cold air upon seeing the 4 cars parked inside the villa's garage. Shock. Even in his wildest dreams, he never imagined that Tang Xiu would actually have so many luxurious cars. The garage itself only had 4 parking spaces, but he simply didn't dare to imagine that there would be a few more luxurious cars parked in this villa's garage. An Audi A8 series, a BMW 7 series, a Ferrari supercar, and a Bentley Bentayga. These 4 cars, each one of them was worth millions. The security guard turned to look at Tang Xiu. He forced a wry smile and said, Mr. Tang, you have so many cars. But why did you take a cab when you came the first time and then left in the morning? I'm a student at Shanghai University. It's nearby, so driving these cars is kinda making myself too conspicuous, said Tang Xiu with a smile. A student? The security guard's lips quivered. Shocked, he couldn't speak any words in response. A few minutes later, the security guard had been registered the 4 cars' license numbers and Tang Xiu's ID card. But even before he left, the shock on his face had yet to completely subside. Tang Xiu pressed the button to close the garage door. He then went straight to the second floor. After taking a bath and putting on his pajamas, he dialed Mu Qingping's cell number. Tang Xiu. Mu Qingping's laughter came out of the phone. Have you packed up yet? Asked Tang Xiu. When will you go 9 Dragons Island? I have packed up everything I need, said Mu Qingping with a smile. I'll be going early in the morning. I'll fly to Hong Kong with Yinin and then transit to Saipan from Hong Kong. If it's like this, I'll send you a cell number. Contact the number before you take off. Tell him to see you and some people will fetch you up in Saipan, sending you directly to 9 Dragons Island. There's a construction project in the island currently. You have absolute rights to manage it. Rest assured. I'll do it, said Mu Qingping seriously. Anyway, are my parents still in Southgate Town? Asked Tang Xiu with a smile. No, said Mu Qingping, they did eat dinner here, but they hurriedly left and didn't finish their meal. It seems like there was an accident or something. An accident? Tang Xiu's expression changed. If so, I'll call them to ask about the situation. Having said that, Tang Xiu hung up the phone and directly dialed his mother's cell number. After half a minute, his call was connected as Su Lingyun's voice came out of the phone. Xiu, how come you're not resting this late? Mom, Big Sis Qingping said that there was an accident at home. What was it? Asked Tang Xiu. Su Lingyun was silent for a few seconds before she replied with a forced smile. I'll let you speak with your dad. He knows more than I do. Hello, Xiu. Tang Yunda's voice came from the other side of the phone. Dad, what happened? Asked Tang Xiu. A hostile family attacked our family's business in the south. The impact is very serious. Even your second grandpa's manor business line has been cut off by them. 3 people trained by our family also died in the conflict, while more than 10 others were severely injured. By now, your big uncle should have rushed over there. Tang Yunda said with a forced smile. Where are you and Mom now? Asked Tang Xiu. We've just arrived in Beijing by plane. But we haven't seen your grandpa yet. Chapter 337, The Troubles Upon the Tang Family. Tell me the details. Maybe I can do something, said Tang Xiu. Xiu, though the Tang family is currently unstable, but we can still deal with it, albeit barely. At the worst we'll only suffer some losses, since the enemy won't dare to launch an all-out attack. After all, a lean camel is still bigger than a horse. They will suffer heavy losses if they want to uproot the Tangs. What does it mean, a lean camel is still bigger than a horse? Tang Xiu creased his brows as he asked, Dad, I don't get what you mean. What's this lean camel is still bigger than a horse? To my knowledge, the Tangs are still a major family in Beijing. Although we might not be ranked first, we can still be considered to be in the top 3, right? Had it been 10 years ago, the Tangs would perhaps still be ranked in the top 3. Tang Yunda replied in a self-deprecating tone, but since your grandpa's asthma flared up with more frequency, plus the changes in the top leadership, our Tang family has been weakened by a great deal. The problems in Beijing being complicated as they are, our enemies took advantage of your grandpa's poor health to incite many issues to pressure our Tang family harder and harder. Now, though the Tang family is still in the top 10 major families of Beijing, we're far from being qualified to be in the first 3 anymore. You mean, currently, the enemy is strong and we're weak? Asked Tang Xiu, frowning. Yes, that's the situation, Tang Yunda wryly replied. When we were both safe, we each developed our own families. But recently, a family hostile to us suddenly gained the support from a medium-sized force, so their forces increased a lot. Hence, they are now getting ready to move against us. Though they dare not lose all decorum with us so brazenly, they didn't stop inciting several small conflicts. Which family? Asked Tang Xiu. The Yao family. Taking a note of the family name, Tang Xiu said, Dad, I may not be involving myself in the family matters as of now, but should the family need me, just tell me right away. The power I wield, regardless of force or financial resources, is bigger than you know. What force? You didn't tell everything to me? Tang Yunda bewildered. Don't ask, Dad. Shortly put, let's keep in touch. Contact me at once should a problem occur. Right, I haven't asked you. In which city our Tangs and the Yaos have clashed? Guangyang and Fukong. I see. But Dad, you and Mom must pay attention to your own health and safety, said Tang Xiu with a nod. Rest assured, son. As he hung up the phone, a chilling light flashed in Tang Xiu's eyes. He may have little affection for the Tangs, but they were, after all, his own blood. He knew well how the Tangs felt about him, for which he could accept and recognize a lot of them. If the enemy acted really rampant, he didn't mind utilizing the everlasting feast hall's strength. Furthermore, it was doomed to be a bloody scene when he used the everlasting feast hall's forces. Dressed in pajamas, he stood up from the bed and walked to the wine cabinet at the side. He opened it and took out a bottle of red wine. Though he wasn't particularly fond of red wine, he felt like it wouldn't hurt taking a little. After pouring the wine, he carried the crystal glass and went to the balcony. He sighed inside while watching the swaying shadows of the trees outside. His forces were still too small. Were he to be given a few more years, let alone the Yaos, he was confident that he would be in an invincible position if he had to contest against all families across the country. Talented people and experts. A cold light flashed from Tang Xiu's eyes as he thought deeply about it. Where should he go looking for a group of talented people? A few minutes later, after he gulped down the red wine, a vague smile appeared on his handsome face. The immortal world was a huge world, whereas Earth was a small one in comparison. Yet, regardless of how big or small it was, they shared the same characteristics. Through great undertakings and battles in the immortal world, he ruled an enormous domain and recruited a lot of subordinates. Although he delegated the management and control of the domain to his subordinates after his strength reached the supreme level. When all is said and done, he had experienced it personally. Hence, inside his heart, he already paid attention to the prisons and the black market. He believed that there would be many capable individuals in these places. When he was in the immortal world, Tang Xiu trained a group of experts in order to help him gather intelligence across the realm, and secretly selected a group of people from several large countries' prisons. Those people were ruthless, whereas each and every one of them had their own skills and abilities. Despite their problematic natures and mentality, but he could control and govern their life and death with his magical powers. Thus, he had once covered most of the immortal world realm with his intelligence network organization. Many of its members even became powerful existences under his training. Although they may not have reached the supreme level, the talent and strength showcased by some of them was also dreaded by millions of celestial beings. Since the immortal world had black markets, so would Earth, he believed. Although the black markets on Earth were not as insane as the ones in the immortal world, where good and evil people mixed up, however, he could recruit some capable people with good martial arts from the underground black market's fighter rings. Half an hour later, Tang Xiu had made up his mind about it. But he could only put the idea to the back of his mind, since he had just registered himself to Shanghai University, while the other reason was that Gu Yan may awaken at any time. I'll have to seize the time to stroll around many places after everything has returned to normal and stabilized. Aside from the everlasting feast hall's people, I have no other experts available to deal with other situations, which makes me rather paralyzed in doing anything, thought Tang Xiu inside his mind. Beijing. Inside the Tang family's ancestral house, Tang Guisheng deeply frowned as he read the documents in his hands, whereas Tang Guishou, who was sitting across him, had anger on his face. Father, the Yao family has cut off our Starlight Group's business channel's goods supply lines in Guangyang and Fukang. They also violently ambushed the Bai family attached to our Tang family. The Bai's family head, Bai Yang, has already stopped the investigation, and if we don't fight back immediately, I'm afraid that Bai Yang won't be capable of holding it. Tang Min, who stood next to the two men, spoke with blazing anger in her eyes. Slowly raising his head, Tang Guisheng then said, "The Yao family has been setting up their machinations in secret in Guangyang and Fukang for several years now. Except for the two largest families which are maintaining their neutral position, several other major forces have been secretly colluding with the Yaos. Hence, it will be very difficult for us to fight back unless the largest families in these two provinces stand up to help us. Acting openly is out of the question, but we can resort to violence in secret," said Tang Min with a grim expression. "I have trained a lot of people all these years, and each of them has disguised their identities. Hence, it's highly unlikely that anyone can look into the relationship with our Tang family if they act. The Yao family in Guangyang and Fukang are not stupid." Tang Guisheng shook his head and said, "Even if there's no direct evidence, I'm afraid they will still be able to guess correctly that our Tang family is the one attacking them. Once they use their intelligence network, it won't be too difficult to investigate the relationship between you and your people." Even if they can investigate, so what? Tang Min snorted coldly and said, "We must let them know that our Tang family is not that easy to mess with. If they really want to lose all decorum with us, we'll accompany them in the fight." At the side, though Tang Guishou was quite furious inside, he could still keep his head cool as he said, "Tang Min, remember the saying that lack of forbearance in small matters will upset the great planning. If we and the Yaos were to lose all decorum now and struggle to death, we won't be able to hold a bargain. Moreover, it's highly likely that other families will cast their eyes covetously at us. At that time, even if the Yaos are unable to exterminate our Tang family thoroughly, the other families will rob us while our family is down. That's right. What we must do for now is to slowly develop and strengthen our own forces." Tang Guisheng nodded and said, "I was sick back then and had no time to manage a lot of things. All of our enemies believe that I won't last any longer, so they are eager to trouble us. But now, my illness has been cured and I can still hold on for another decade." "Why did you think I hid the fact that my illness has been cured?" "It's because I want to patiently win more time for our Tang family. We already began to implement our secret plan last month. After we allocate such huge resources under these circumstances, I'm sure we'll certainly be able to overtake the Yao family by then. But the Yao family's forces in those two southern provinces are way too tight." Tang Min forced a wry smile and said, "If it were to continue like this, they will completely decimate our forces in those two provinces. I'll contact second brother. He's been enjoying himself in Jingmen Island for so many years, so he gotta come out for a little walk. Even if our forces in those two southern provinces were to be uprooted completely, we'll make sure that the Yao and those several small families are unable to feel better," said Tang Guisheng. "Do you want me to go?" asked Tang Min quickly. "For the time being, no." Tang Guisheng shook his head and said, "Your elder brother has gone there personally. He should be able to buy some time." "That's right. I have also told Yunda about our family situation. I didn't expect that he actually had left behind some hidden chess pieces in the past. If the situation worsens, it's possible for us to use some of his hidden forces." "Second brother? Didn't he?" Tang Min stared at him blankly and asked in astonishment. "There are some things out of your knowledge. Your second big brother and his wife are now on the way to Beijing. They should be arriving soon. You'll know about it clearly after they get here." Tang Min somewhat was curious as she didn't know as to why her second big brother would straightly fall into a vegetative state in the past, yet he was still able to arrange some hidden moves in secret. Ring, ring, ring. On the table, Tang Guisheng's mobile phone ringed all of a sudden. Tang Guosheng narrowed his brows as he grabbed the mobile and said, "What happened?" "Father, some people have just burned our Starlight Group's HQ in Guangyang. The fire is very fierce and several security guards inside were unable to escape. The person in charge over there has already reported the fire to the fire department, but the firemen have been delayed and it's been nearly 20 minutes already since the fire started," said Tang Yunpeng in an angry voice. Chapter 338, Grave Situation. Tang Guosheng's expression changed drastically as anger was cast on his face. Starlight Group was a corporation belonging to the Tang family, and it brought billions of revenue to the Tang family annually. It could be said that the Starlight Group was one of three major sources of wealth for the Tangs. It would bring tremendous losses to the Tang family once it was destroyed. Who did it? It hasn't been investigated clearly. The security guards who were trapped in the HQ building have contacted the security guards in the control room, but they have yet to find out who did it. Also, if the firemen don't arrive soon, the entire Starlight Group HQ will be burnt down. By that time, the security guards trapped inside will also be buried inside. Tang Guosheng took a deep breath and replied in a low voice, "Contact the security guards inside immediately. Leave 2 people inside to continue finding clues, whereas the rest must immediately find a way to escape. Also, tell those staying behind that we will provide their family members the best treatment and livelihood." "Understood," Tang Yunpeng replied and immediately hung up the phone. Putting back the mobile on the tea table, Tang Guosheng then fell into silence. His eyes flashed as he silently thought as to solve the problem. "Eldest brother, let me go there," said Tang Guoshou in a deep voice. Slowly raising his head, Tang Guosheng shook his head and said, "You and I can't go. The enemies will think that we can't afford to lose it if we couldn't sit still here. By that time, their attacks will be more rampant." At this time, 2 people came inside. It was Tang Yunda and Su Lingyun. "Father, how's the current situation?" As Tang Yunda came in, he straightly approached Tang Guosheng and rapidly asked. "Some people have just started a fire on our Starlight Group's HQ. If my guess is correct, it's them who did it," said Tang Guosheng in a deep voice. "Do you want me to go there?" asked Tang Yunda, his expression changing. "For the time being, no." Tang Guosheng shook his head and said, "Your eldest brother is already taking care of the situation there. By the way, you told me you arranged some hidden chess pieces back then. How big is it right now?" "The one in Saipan is inconvenient to be moved since it's currently a crucial time for him to be promoted. Once he's successfully promoted, he'll become Saipan's top leader. In due course, some others will even be able to have several other distinguished identities. This will bring about huge benefits when the time comes. However, we can use the one in Macau. After many years of development, the company there already owns nearly 100 billion in capital, while also training a lot of loyal and devoted subordinates." Tang Guosheng's eyes squinted as he inquired, "Let your big brother deal with the problem first. If he can't solve it, then you can use your people from Macau. The force that has been secretly trained by our Tang family must not act rashly for the time being. They must stay hidden if there's no life and death crisis." "No problem," Tang Yunda nodded and said, "but how should we manage the Starlight Group's situation? Since the HQ is burned, I'm afraid business will be delayed for quite a period of time even if we move to a new office. If it's really no good, we'll just commence a full withdrawal from Guangyang and Fukong. Although the Starlight Group's HQ resides in Guangyang, there are also several Starlight Group's branches in several neighboring provinces. We can first use a branch as the temporary Starlight Group's HQ when the time comes." Tang Yunda nodded. Suddenly, his expression slightly flickered. He remembered what his son just told him on his way here. After hesitating, he then spoke it out, "Father, Xiao had just contacted me." "You told him about our family's situation?" Tang Guosheng frowned and asked in a heavy voice. "Yes. He's also a member of our Tang family." Tang Yunda nodded and said, since he took the initiative to ask, I didn't think it unnecessary to hide it from him. He has grown up, and I don't want to hide it from him either. Humph, he indeed has grown up, but he's still a child in our eyes. Tang Guisheng snorted and said, I want him to finish his studies well and not be concerned about our difficulties. We, the Tang family, owe him way too much. We only want the best for him in everything, whereas we will shoulder the other problems by ourselves. For the first time, Su Lingyun interrupted and said, Father, I think Yunda is right. Xiao may be still very young, but he's very sensible and thoughtful. There's no need to hide this from him. Since he also has the blood of the Tangs, he must advance and retreat alongside the Tang family. Also, I heard him saying that he's made a lot of money now and he wants me to tell him should the family need his assistance. A trace of anger flashed on Tang Guisheng's face even though he finally did not flare up. If it were his son, Tang Yunda speaking, he would have scolded and cursed him. But the one speaking was the Tang's daughter-in-law whom they had abandoned for 2 decades. Hence, he didn't feel right being angry with her. Only after suppressing his anger did he reply, it's true that Xiao is also one of the Tangs, but he's still studying now. It's also true that he must advance and retreat with the Tang family. But not at this time. We'll wait until he finishes his studies. After he graduates from university, I will arrange the best path for him regardless of anything he wants to do. If he wants to enter the family business, then I will also slowly hand over the authority of our Tang family's business to him. I will also pave the way for him if he wants to take part in politics and the government. But remember, not now. Tang Yunda and Su Lingyun exchanged glances. They could feel the favor and love in their father's tone toward their son. However, tough and unyielding a man as he was, Tang Yunda's courage and boldness of vision didn't wear off despite having been comatose for 2 decades. Furthermore, despite being in comatose for 2 decades and having gone through loneliness in the darkness that could make anyone insane, he survived it with his unyieldingness. Hence, he was very much tranquil at present. Father, you've spoken your mind. But I must tell you what Xiao has been thinking about, said Tang Yunda seriously. Tang Guisheng was dazed for a moment before he asked, what Xiao has in mind? He told me to inform him right away should the Tangs need anything. He also told me he has the power I do not know about. Though, frankly speaking, I myself am quite shocked by what I already know. What power could Xiao possibly have? Is it his business in Star City? Asked Tang Guisheng with creased brows. Tang Yunda forced a smile and said, it's more than that. Though I don't know how much wealth Xiao has in detail, but it should be no less than 3 to 4 billion, I suppose. Tang Guisheng and Tang Guishou blankly stared for a moment. Even Tang Min was also dumbfounded, an incredulous look on her face. 3 to 4 billion? How could it be possible? Tang Guisheng had sent some people to investigate the magnificent Tang Corporation's assets. At the most, the enterprise only had 1 billion. How could it be possible for it to have several times more all of a sudden? Suddenly, Tang Guisheng realized something as he said, you mean, aside from the 3 or 4 billion worth of assets Xiao has, that you know of? He still has forces you don't know about? That's right. Tang Yunda nodded. Then tell me, what other assets does Xiao have beside magnificent Tang Corporation? Asked Tang Guisheng in a deep voice. Xiao bought an island in the Pacific Ocean for 2.5 billion yuan. He initially borrowed the money from his disciple, Chen Zhizhong. However, I don't know from where he got 2.5 billion yuan to repay Chen Zhizhong. Also, he recently went abroad to rebuild the island. I supposed he must have spent quite a lot of money in the project. Shocked, Tang Guisheng asked, he actually bought an island in the Pacific Ocean? For what purpose? He said that the island will be our Tang family's supreme base in the future, said Tang Yunda. An island in the Pacific Ocean as a supreme headquarters? Tang Yunda's word shocked not only to Tang Guisheng but also to Tang Guishou, and Tangmin Tangshou said that he would make a supreme headquarters for the Tang family. Would there be a time that the Tang family would be unable to stay in their home country and must hide in the vast sea? After a long period of time, Tang Guisheng beckoned and said in a heavy voice, regardless of Xiu's power, he's still too young and won't be able to help much for now. Hence, we must first resolve the immediate crisis. Shanghai, Blue Star Villa Complex. Tang Xiu didn't immediately rest, nor did he cultivate. After pondering for quite a long time, he then dialed Gu Xiaoshue's cell number. Are you looking for me, Grand Master? Gu Xiaoshue's light and lively voice was transmitted from the phone. Xiaoshue, I have some issues I need to ask you. Please do say, Grand Master. Are there any branches of our Everlasting Feast Hall in Guangyang and Fukang? Asked Tang Xiu. We have Grand Fortune Jewelries and True Faith Real Estate Group branches there. But our Everlasting Feast Hall only has a small of number people in those two provinces. How many Everlasting Feast Halls experts can be moved currently? Asked Tang Xiu. All of them can be moved out at any time. Grand Master, I can immediately send them to Guangyang and Fukang should you order me so. That's right. I also recalled that some people in Fukang owe our Everlasting Feast Hall a favor. Who are they? It's the Huang family of Fukang. Master had once saved the Huang's family head. Also, the reason why he was able to become the Huang's family head was also part of it, due to some assistance from Master. So the Huang family will fully support you should you have any need there. Does this Huang family has a big influence in Fukang? If they can't be ranked as the first, they should be second. In the past 10 years, the family head of the Huang family has visited our Jingmen Island's Everlasting Feast Hall's HQ every year. He always wanted to see Master but went back disappointed every time. But what? To make the Huang family feel grateful to our Everlasting Feast Hall, I had once issued a decree that the Huang family can send 3 of their most outstanding family members to study at our Jingmen Island's Everlasting Feast Hall every 3 years. We can say that we have trained a lot of their experts in these 10 years. Since we have the Huang family there, then we don't need to send our Everlasting Feast Hall's people to act. My family has encountered some troubles and I need some people to act in Guangyang and Fukang. Send me the Huang family's head contact number. At once, Grand Master. Chapter 339, Traces and Clues. Having received Fukang's the Huang's family head's number, Tang Xiu fell into deep thought and didn't immediately contact him nor gave it to the Tang family. At present, he was clueless as to what extent the circumstance had developed into. Hence, he chose to act cool-headedly instead of recklessly getting himself involved. Furthermore, the Tangs and the Yaos were not just clans of business. Most importantly, both families had ties in the political field. With high-level political contests coming into the field, it would lead to all sorts of trouble once he intervened. Just like using the best steel to make the knife's edge, he was indeed the best resource at the moment. But the conflict between the Tangs and the Yaos was only at the initial stage, far from the life and death stage. Unless the Tang family was about to suffer massive losses, which could seriously hamper the Tang family, only then would he act without reserve. However, he actually still had time to visit the Huang family's head since the Huang family head and the Everlasting Feast Hall had a deep relationship. After analyzing the situation, he decided to contact the Huang family head tomorrow. He then put away all his thoughts to the back of his mind and he went back to his bed, sitting cross-legged and began cultivating. At present, his cultivation had drastically progressed and reached the peak of the flesh-strengthening stage. There was only a step left before he made the breakthrough to the bone transformation stage. He fortunately didn't get stuck in the flesh-strengthening stage for a long time due to his fortuitous encounter in Nine Dragons Island. Sitting cross-legged in cultivation, layer upon layer of star force from the stars in the sky surged in as though tide waves toward Tang Xiu. His star force's absorption speed now was several times faster compared with when he was in the skin-strengthening stage. Unfortunately, the heaven and earth spiritual qi in Shanghai was extremely scarce, causing his cultivation speed to be far worse than when he was cultivating in Nine Dragons Island. The heavenly art of cosmic genesis was divided into 3 realms. The first, star's tyrannical body realm, was divided into 9 stages, which were the vitality tempering, the skin strengthening, the bone transformation, the meridian transformation, the marrow transformation, the viscera transformation, the blood and qi circulation, and the 9 cores phase forming. By now, he was at the peak of the flesh strengthening stage. Though it couldn't be compared with the golden core stage, it didn't have much difference. He had the confidence to have comparable strength to an initial level golden core stage expert once he broke through to the bone transformation stage. The more his cultivation advanced, the more secret arts he could use. However, in today's modern society, he didn't have much opportunity to use them. It seems I need to cultivate in Nine Dragons Island if I want to increase my strength quickly. After cultivating for 4 hours, Tang Xiu slowly opened his eyes, his handsome face showing a wry smile. The result of his 4 hours of cultivation were only comparable with half an hour of practice in Nine Dragons Island. At 8 a.m. Woken up from his sleep, Tang Xiu washed his face and rinsed his mouth. After refreshing himself, he went downstairs and then realized that there was nobody in this villa aside from himself. There was no housemaid here to help him make breakfast, unlike in Southgate Town. Should I hire a domestic worker? Tang Xiu hesitated for a moment. He then decided to take the time to find a housekeeping service company and choose a good-natured and diligent domestic worker. I gotta go to the campus and buy some food on the way. Tang shook his head and forced out a wry smile. After leaving the villa complex, he bought some food in a shop near the business district and didn't take a cab as he ate while walking. Though the students' military training would begin on the 7th of this month, Tang Xiu himself didn't want to attend it. The university's military training subject was simply a child's play for him. Attending it would only be an utter nuisance. Hence, he had long decided to find Lu Bai after going to the classroom today. Since the man was the vice dean of the Department of History at Shanghai University, he should have the ability to help him withdrawal from the military training subject. The B building's classroom, on the 4th floor. As Tang Xiu arrived at the classroom, there were 20 to 30 people scattered around the classroom. Yu Kai, Hu Qingsong, Zhao Liang and 2 other students who had a party yesterday were gathered together as they laughed and chatted. Eldest brother Tang. Seeing Tang Xiu's arrival, Hu Qingsong's eyes immediately turned bright as he waved and shouted. With his loud voice, the other 20 to 30 students in the classroom all looked at Tang Xiu almost in an instant. They heard about Tang Xiu's name when they came to the campus. Not only they learned that Tang Xiu was the top scorer of the CET science subject in Shuangqing province, they also learned that Tang Xiu's former class teacher in charge was also their current class teacher in charge. Smiling at all of his classmates, Tang Xiu then strode toward Hu Qingsong's side and said with a smile, "Doesn't it say that the class begins at 9:30? Why are you here so early? What else but to meet and greet? It's the first day where all classmates meet each other, dude. Although nearly half of our classmates have yet to arrive, but we still want to know whether we have striking bells in our class." "But heck, it's really a pity," said Yu Kai. Tang Xiu couldn't help laughing. When he entered the classroom, he saw that their class only had 6 girls, and their appearances were very ordinary. "We are here to study, mate. If you want to chase after girls, you'd better go to the bar outside the campus. But seeing your circumstance, it should be easy for you to pick up some paid hot chicks who fool around in nightclubs," said Tang Xiu with a smile. "Nah, I'm not interested in the king that casually invite men to their rooms." Yu Kai waved his hand and said, "Don't you think enjoying that kind of chick is kinda like scavenging junk?" "Scavenging junk?" Everyone burst into laughter. Tang Xiu rolled his eyes. Feeling amused yet feeling ridiculous, he said, "You think you're picking up junk, but others may find it cheaper, no? You A man who has eaten to the full has no idea how hungry starving men could be. If you don't believe me, ask Hu Ching Song. If it was him, would he think that it was only scavenging junk? Nope. I absolutely won't feel like that, replied Hu Ching Song immediately. I will feel that I'm a very handsome and charming man. I would have been very glad if those hot chicks dragged me to their rooms. Pfft, rolling his eyes, Yu Kai groaned, if you really want to have these paper chicks, let's go to a few nightclubs later. I'll help you hook up with some of them. Anyhow, eldest brother Tang, will you teach us your flirting skill? I really know nothing about flirting with girls. Tang Xiu shook his head and said, if you really want to learn, I'll buy some love secret manuals to read later. After I learn some flirting skills from them, then I'll immediately teach you. Of course, if you find it too troublesome, I'll buy it for you. Are you kidding me, dude? Said Yu Kai resentfully. If you really don't have real skills to flirt with chicks, how can Teacher Han possibly do everything she could to teach in Shanghai University only to chase you? Besides, I dare say that she must have used her network to enter our Department of History and become our class teacher in charge. Tang Xiu flung his head to the side. Since explaining wouldn't clear the idea, why would he bother to explain? It was Han Qingwu's life, whereas he himself also his own. Their relationship was only between a teacher and student. How would such a relationship appear in the middle, to begin with? Although her looks was very much like his wife in the immortal world, yet it was but only appearances. He didn't believe that Han Qingwu and that woman had the slightest relationship whatsoever. Hu Jingsong also picked up the topic as he said deceitfully, eldest brother Tang, you may not believe me, but when I came back with Teacher Han last night, I realized a very peculiar situation. Staring blankly at the comment, Tang Xiu was confused. What situation? When we came back last night, Teacher Han's eyes were flashing and she always had a bright smile on her pretty face every time your name was brought up. I dare say that Teacher Han really has a crush on you. Even if you two are not together now, but as long as you're bold enough to confess your love, you can definitely hug her in your arms. Screw off. Tang Xiu snapped and cursed in reply. Tisk, tsk. Did you hear it? Did you hear what Qingsong said, eldest brother Tang? Yu Kai clicked his tongue as he sighed, Teacher Han has a crush on you. You won't be able to pretend regardless of how much you try. At least not in front of us. You don't know how many people want to hold the likes of such a strikingly beautiful woman such as Teacher Han in their arms. Tang Xiu suddenly realized that these guys were regarding him as the reincarnation of a fucking stud horse. There was nothing but lust, passion, and love in their brains. Didn't they know that there was something outside those things, like the many feelings between two persons? Speak of the devil and he doth appear. When they were talking about Han Qingwu, the beautiful figure of the person herself appeared outside the classroom. Her elegant hair floated in the breeze as she clapped her hands, causing everyone's eyes to fall on her in an instant. In an attractive one-piece dress that served as a perfect foil for her delicate and tender figure, coupled with her striking looks, she was simply like a goddess in the mind of numerous male students. Gently caressing her long hair in front of her forehead, Han Qingwu smiled and said, our class has 48 students altogether. From the total, 28 have come, whereas the other 20 have yet to arrive. However, I believe that the others will come soon on this second day of registration. Now, for the students who have arrived, go to the podium and introduce yourselves respectively. I'll go first. Yu Kai raised his hand and then strode to the podium. As bold and open as he was, he smiled and swept his gaze over all the students. He cleared his throat and said, hi classmates, my name is Yu Kai. I'm a native of Shanghai, age 21 and have never been married until this year, and no girlfriend either. So if any of you have any beautiful women in your hometown, or beautiful friends or relatives, you gotta spontaneously introduce them to me. Anyways, I have a wide range of hobbies. I love playing funny games, so all of you can find me later to play often. Amidst the laughter, Yu Kai carried through his self-introduction. His speech was very amusing and won favorable impression from the vast majority of the classmates. Nearby, Han Qinggu was at a loss whether she had to cry or laugh. She gently raised her hand and laughed, saying, "Why do I feel like you're not in university to study but to find a blind date? You don't think our Shanghai University is a marriage agency, do you?" "Ugh, how did you know, Teacher Han?" Yu Kai deliberately showed a shocked expression. The students underneath the podium laughed yet again. However, Tang Xiu didn't laugh. He had hardly paid any attention to Han Qinggu before. But today, unbeknownst to him, or maybe because of what Yu Kai and Hu Qingsong said left something inside his heart, he paid some more attention to Han Qinggu today. But precisely because of paying more attention to her, he caught the sight of Han Qinggu cascading her fingers and glimpsed at her fingers' flicking motion. The sight made Tang Xiu's complexion immediately change. Chapter 340, Deja Vu. Tang Xiu's eyes sparkled as his sight fixated on Han Qinggu's cascading fingers. It was a shocking discovery. Han Qinggu's movement was. It was her most habitual action in the immortal world. Back then, although Tang Xiu drowned himself in cultivation and somewhat neglected her, but when all was said and done, he lived together with her for millenniums. He was perfectly aware of this habitual action of hers. At this time, Tang Xiu recalled that, after his return to Earth, he came across Han Qinggu many times, for which, he suddenly came to a realization. That was, he had never paid attention to her words, actions, and demeanor before. And now, clues appeared one by one in Han Qinggu's actions. The mannerism and the changes in demeanor. Her little actions were extremely similar with her in the immortal world. This is impossible. Tang Xiu suddenly stood, attracting the attention of Han Qinggu and the other students. He didn't go to the podium but turned to the back door and left the classroom. Yet, the restlessness inside his heart didn't reduce in the slightest after he came out of the classroom. Instead, it got more intense. Oh. Suddenly, he smelled smoke in the air. He immediately followed the smoke trail to the stairwell. There, he saw two young men squatting in the stairwell, smoking while chatting. Tang Xiu walked over and then said, "Brothers, could you give me a cigarette? I was in a hurry when I came outside and forgot to bring mine." The two young men were startled for a second, as one of them smiled and took out half a pack of cigarettes. He pulled out one and handed it over to Tang Xiu together with his lighter. He then laughed. "We originally thought that students who can be admitted to Shanghai University were only the goody two-shoes and don't like smoking. Never thought I would find another smoker buddy here. Anyways, I'm Tang Chao from Western Prairie, and he's Wudong from Northeast. We both are freshmen in the Department of Finance." Tang Xiu lit up his cigarette and took deep puffs. After the restless feeling inside his heart disappeared, he said, "I'm Tang Xiu from Star City and also a freshman, albeit in the Department of History. You two continue chatting, I still have to go downstairs. We'll chat some other time." "Okay, go." The two young men could also feel Tang Xiu's restlessness as they nodded and replied. Smoking his cigarette, Tang Xiu went out of the building and headed straight to a small grove nearby. He then sat himself down on a stone bench by the sidewalk trail, while two identical faces kept appearing in his mind. Han Qinggu. Shui Qingcheng. His wife in the immortal world was called Shui Qingcheng. Their slightest facial expressions, words, and actions, as well as their bearings, ceaselessly turned his mind upside down as he compared and contrasted them. Yet, the more he compared, the more he could tell that there were too many similarities between them. This is highly improbable. Shui Qingcheng ought to be in the immortal world. At the most, she would only have trouble cultivating the heavenly art of cosmic genesis. But it's absolutely impossible for her to come to Earth. Even if she wanted to, she doesn't have the ability to send her avatar embodiment here. Only, they are clearly people from two different worlds. I couldn't care less whether they are alike. But, why do they have some resemblances to their bearing, words, and actions? Is this just a mere coincidence? Inside the Department of History's classroom. Upon seeing Tang Xiu leave without a word, the 20 students and Han Qingwu had bewildered expressions on their faces. Han Qingwu herself wanted to chase after Tang Xiu, asking for the reason. But she didn't feel right to leave out the other students here. Hence, she could only smile and explain, well, maybe Tang Xiu is not feeling well. We don't need to worry about him. Anyways, let's continue with the self-introductions. My turn. Hu Qingsong got up. Han Qingwu nodded. While listening to the students' self-introductions and dealing with everyone inside, she came before the classroom's windows at the front row without herself realizing it. She knew Tang Xiu rather well. She was clear that Tang Xiu was definitely not someone who would easily display such a rude gaffe. She had never seen Tang Xiu as silent as a grave and with such an unsightly face. After the students finished introducing themselves, her eyes glanced out of the window. But at this moment, she could clearly see Tang Xiu sitting alone smoking on a stone bench on the sidewalk in the small grove near the classroom building. That's right. He was smoking. Han Qingwu was stupefied. She didn't know when did Tang Xiu learn to smoke. Something must have happened. She deeply thought inside in silence. She wasn't aware of the fact that she herself had become somewhat preoccupied since Tang Xiu left the classroom. Hey, did you notice? Teacher Han seems absent-minded. When Tang Xiu was still here, Teacher Han was very energetic. But after he inexplicably left, she became somewhat inattentive. Don't tell me what everyone said is true, that Teacher Han really came to Shanghai University to pursue him? No shit. Does Teacher Han really like Tang Xiu? She smiled a lot less ever since he left the classroom. Man, Tang Xiu is too cool, isn't he? He even can make Teacher Han be deeply in love with him. I gotta consult and ask his guidance another day to learn his experience of picking up hot chicks. The students gossiped in whispers so as to avoid being heard by Han Qingwu. But she herself barely registered the students introducing themselves on the podium. After all the students had finished with their introductions, she laughed spiritedly and said, well, I believe we all know each other now. There's nothing much to do this morning, so you all can chat with your classmates here. I'll come back to the classroom at 2 p.m. and we'll elect the interim class president then. After that, you will receive the list for textbooks and teaching materials. You can find them later in the bookstore. Teacher Han, does the university have many courses for us to attend? Asked Zhao Liang. Not too many. But you still have to study many subjects, though. Han Qingwu shook her head and said, although you are all Department of History's students, you also need to select some elective courses. You can choose what you like and what you want. By the way, I also have received a notice from the campus that we also have a lot of student societies here. You can sign up for any societies you like, but it will have to wait until you've finished your military training subject. Teacher Han, can we apply to establish a new society? Yu Kai suddenly asked. Applying to establish a new society is rather troublesome. Han Qingwu shook her head and said, this must wait after the student military training finished. Got it. Yu Kai nodded. Han Qingwu stayed in the classroom for a few more minutes before she casually found an excuse to leave. When she quickly came to that small grove where Tang Xiu was sitting motionlessly on the stone bench, as if being in deep thought about something, she secretly sighed inside and inquired, what are you thinking about? Tang Xiu looked up. A complicated mood flashed in his eyes as he saw Han Qingwu. He then shook his head and said, it's nothing. I just felt upset all of a sudden, so I came out to have some fresh air and vent it out. Han Qingwu stamped on Tang Xiu's cigarette but on the ground and said, your worry seems quite heavy since you're smoking, doesn't it? Can you tell what matter is concerning you? Perhaps I can help you to dispel it. Tang Xiu was silent for a moment. He slowly shook his head and said, "No, you can't help me." "How do you know I can't help you?" Han Qingwu lightly laughed and said, "Tell me, perhaps I can help." "Don't forget, I'm a teacher and you're a student." After thinking deeply for a while, Tang Xiu then said, "If you really want to help, then I'll ask you something. If there are two worlds, one being our planet and the other one is another world, tell me, will the same identical person appear in both worlds?" Han Qingwu involuntarily laughed. How can two worlds exist? Even if there is, the same identical person is impossible to appear. Is it even possible for a person to have doppelgangers? I may not know much about physics, but a lot of physicists have been trying to study it, but they have never found any places in the outer space like our Earth, or such as the positive and negative of the North and South poles. Even after having spent so many years researching it, they haven't found it yet. Nobody not being able to study it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Tang Xiu shook his head and said, "I was quite restless since I had some questions in my mind that I could not answer." "Don't worry, though. I'm fine already, perhaps after a while. I really don't know what goes on inside your head." Han Qingwu forced a smile and said, "Well, forget it. You had better not to lose yourself in various fancies, conjectures, and whatnot. Besides, you haven't introduced yourself to your class yet. Forget it. Even if I don't introduce myself, I'm afraid that everyone already knows me." Tang Xiu shook his head and said, "After all, the fact that we, teacher and student, entered the same university simultaneously and continued our teacher-student relationship has been publicly known by them already." Han Qingwu placed her finger ring on her pinky, pressing her middle finger on top the ring finger, and the forefinger atop it. She then lifted her hand and gently caressed her long hair as she said with a smile, "In this case, you must thank me for making you famous, no? How about treating me to a meal today since there's nothing to do this noon?" "I can't. I have something to do at noon." Tang Xiu shook his head. "What are you gonna do?" Han Qingwu was puzzled and said, "Are you not willing to treat me to a meal?" "I'm going to look for someone at noon. He's our Department of History's vice dean," said Tang Xiu. Han Qingwu was startled for a moment and asked with a puzzled expression, "What are you seeking the vice dean for?" "To request a leave of absence," said Tang Xiu. Han Qingwu was stunned. She never imagined that Tang Xiu wanted to find the vice dean in order to ask a leave of absence. It could be said that she was crystal clear about Tang Xiu's ability for asking leaves of absence. During his study in Star City First High School, Tang Xiu was still asking for leaves of absence even in his final period of study. Even the number of days he asked for was very long. He used to ask for a leave before very frequently, but why did he also want to ask a leave of absence now? He did say in Star City that he had a lot of businesses that needed to be done, but after he came to Shanghai, did he still have other important things to do? "Tang Xiu, what are you requesting a leave of absence for?" "I don't want to attend the military training. I feel that it will be very boring. So, while others are taking military training, I want to study the whole freshman's curriculum. Thus, I will be very relaxed when the new term officially starts." Han Qingwu suddenly understood. She let out a smile and said, "Ah. It turns out that you don't want to participate in the military training. I can understand it. But when I was in the university back then, I also thought of every possible means to not participate in the subject. Even though I didn't get a holiday or a leave of absence, I also tried various means and excuses to reduce my time attending the military training. Anyways, would the vice dean even approve your request?" "I know the vice dean of Shanghai University's Department of History, Lu Bai." "You know Vice Dean Lu?" cried Han Qingwu with an incredulous expression.